advisement.
Mark, we're on air.
Sorry.
Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, August 19th, 2026. I'm Ginny Farber, Chair of the Board of Water and Sewer, and I'm calling this meeting to order at 1 p.m. We're meeting in a hybrid format in the Nauset Room over Zoom and are live streamed on channel 1072. This meeting is being recorded, and I'm going to take attendance. Mark Burson.
Here?
Thank you. Tim Brady.
Here.
Tim Coonahan. Jenny Farber's here. Kevin Mahoney. Bob Rich.
Here.
Jack Kadzik.
Here.
And Lynn Brunel. Also,
Here.
thank you. Also in the room today, we have Sue Brown from the Water Department, Rich Waldo from DPW. We have Kevin Galligan, Select Board Liaison and Chair of the Wastewater Management Advisory Committee. We have Jesse Freeman, Marina Rauch, and who else from Veolia? Leanne Monahan, thank you, welcome. We have, let's see, we have John Nelson's in the room. We have Dan Pelletier, who's presenting today. We have Tim Harrison online. Our first order of business this morning is a public hearing. It is for Board of Water and Sewer Policy Number 2026-4-15, claims for abatements or adjustments on bills. And I will
We
read.
need a motion to have that?
Do we
public
need a
hearing?
motion? No, I just need to read the notice.
Just read it.
Right. So, Town of Orleans Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners, notice of public hearing. The Town of Orleans Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, August 19th, 2026, at 1 p.m. in the Nauset Room at Orleans Town Hall, 19 School Road, Orleans, Mass., to discuss and adopt the Board of Water and Sewer Commission Policy Number 2026-4-15, claims for abatements or adjustments on bills. The prepared policy is available for public review in the Department of Public Works during regular business hours, and interested parties are invited to attend and provide comments. I'm wondering, Sue, if you want to introduce this since you are the author.
I am. This is a policy that was developed from an incident that occurred between a meter pit and a property where there was a leak. The water side paid for the leak, but because it did not go into the sewer, it went into the ground, they requested an abatement, and this is the policy that arose out of that incident, and it's based on a policy that is from P-Town.
Thank you. With that, is there any public comment in the room on this issue? Seeing none. Is there any public comment online?
No hands raised.
Thank you. Is there any comment by members of the commission? None? Okay. Could I get a motion to close the public hearing? Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
I, Bob Rich.
Jack's voting today. We're missing one person.
I, Jack Kadzik.
Thank you. You voted. Aye, Jenny Farber.
Aye, Kevin Holmes.
Hi, Mark Person.
Aye, Tim Brady.
Okay, so that's 700. Is there any other commission discussion on this issue? Move to accept the LMP as presented, at the policy as presented. Okay. And a second?
Here.
Okay,
Bob.
thank you. And one more time, roll call, please.
I, Jack Kadzik. I, Bob Rich.
Aye, Jenny Farber.
Aye, Kevin Mahoney.
Hi, Mark Person.
Aye, Tim Brady.
Okay, it's 700. Thank you. All right, we're done with that piece. Our next order of business is public comment. Is there any general public comment in the room? Is there any public comment online?
No hands raised.
Thank you very much. Our third order of business is 66 and 75 Route 6A. We're going to hold that in abeyance, thank you, until Mike Solitro can join us. So our next order of business is preliminary betterment calculations for Phase 2. This is an AECom presentation, and Tim, are you presenting today?
Yes, I am.
Good afternoon.
Hello. All right, so let me share my screen. So while I'm pulling this up, I'll just kind of introduce it. So as you're aware, we recently finished substantial completion for the Phase 2 sewer area. And so one of the next orders of business for the town is to assess betterments. So I was asked to prepare this presentation to kind of give the board a sense for where we are in that process and how things are turning out. So I do have some preliminary values to share with you today. We are still going to be going through at least another round of QAQC just to make sure that all of these values are right. A little further coordination with the finance department, and then we can move into finalizing these. All right.
Super.
So I'll just follow along with the slides that are in your packet, but basically what we'll talk about is some of the sewer unit basics. That is the core of what we're calculating here and how betterments are assessed by the town's bylaw. And again, this is for Phase 2. The Phase 2 betterments are being calculated and assessed in accordance with the procedure that was established in Phase 1 in compliance with the bylaw. I believe Dan will be talking about some potential changes for Phase 3, but what I'm talking about is the betterments that are actively being worked on right now. We'll talk about the Phase 2 sewer units, what that's looking like, what the preliminary betterment values we're looking at, and then how is that total betterment value getting spread around the Phase 2 property owners. I won't spend too much time on this slide, but basically what I'm showing up here in the first couple bullets are some of the calculations that we're going to be talking through today. A couple of the kind of rules that it's important to keep in mind is that every property is assigned at least one sewer unit. So everybody will get at least that minimum sewer betterment value. And then we are, of course, rounding up to the nearest 100th on the sewer unit per property. So the numbers that we're talking about today will reflect those rules. But basically, if we are to calculate the sewer unit, so that's how much is the base unit of measure for sewer usage and betterment, it's the total applicable water usage within the area divided by the number of single-family residential equivalents. And so we use the term single-family residential equivalents just because we want to make sure that it's not just single-family homes that are being reflected in this calculation. There can be condos or properties can be classified in different ways that still reflects single-family residential usage of water and sewer, but not necessarily be classified as a single-family residential parcel. So when we're talking about the water usage, we are looking specifically at the Phase 2 service area. We're looking at those residential accounts, as I mentioned, and it is 3 years of total water usage from January of 23 through December of 25. We are not looking at any water usage from outside of the service area, nor are we looking at property classifications other than the residential types. And so the water usage is actually, comes right out of the town's munis system, and it, based on water meters, is then assigned to the individual parcels.
Hey, and Tim, just if you would, as you go through this, just clarify that this is the same way, the same theory as Phase 1.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Could I ask just a quick question? For a storefront, how do you determine what they are in terms of being a single-family
Water
equivalent?
meter.
So every property in town is classified by the assessor. And so these, actually, the slide that I have up right now are the single-family residential equivalents. So if it's a mixed-use property, then it would be not counted in this list. But if it's classified as a residential in these categories, then it would be.
Right, I'm asking about non-residential units. I mean, businesses, gas stations, retail places, supermarkets. I mean, how do you determine what the single-family residential equivalent of those are?
There isn't.
They're excluded
They're
Correct. So in
from
terms
the
of,
But
calculation.
there's a reason why they're excluded. You might just want to explain, Tim.
Well, you're going to give them a betterment, aren't you?
Yeah, eventually,
Could we
but for this
talk one at a
calculation.
time, please, through the chair? Thank you. Could you finish your question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand how they factor into this, because, I mean, clearly in the downtown, there were a lot of them, and maybe less so in subsequent phases, but I'm just curious as to how you use them in the denominator. How do you get them into the denominator so that you're spreading it over them as well?
correct. So the businesses, mixed use, all of those types of classifications do not get factored into calculating the sewer unit. The sewer unit is calculated based on the single-family residential classifications to establish kind of the lowest amount of flow that's going to be calculated for the sewer unit. All of the other properties that fall outside of this, and we'll talk about this later in the presentation, but you're basically going to use the total water usage from all of the properties, regardless of classification. Anybody who's getting a betterment has their total water usage compared against the flow value of the sewer unit to determine the number of sewer units that are assigned to that property.
It seems like this is going to overabsorb if you're going to allocate sewer units to people that you didn't use in the calculation.
This is exactly the way it was done in the first phase. So can we hold questions and let Tim go through
Sure.
it? And then we'll, if it's still,
Okay.
yeah, great. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay. All right. So as we're looking at the denominator for this with the residential units, just a simple breakdown of how we calculated that. So if a property is classified as a two-family residential property, it gets 2 single-family units. Similar for 3, multiple houses, and individual condominiums within a property are assigned 1 residential unit each. And so I thought it would be helpful just to have a simple example. So in this example, we have a number of properties for these different classifications, and you end up with 19 parcels that are being accounted for. But there's actually, based on how they were classified, there's actually 27 equivalent residential units on those 19 parcels. So that was kind of the simple example. This is the actual data that we're getting out of phase 2. You can kind of see how the distribution is amongst these residentials. It's predominantly single family properties, but there are a number of other categories here. You can see how they're broken out by percentage. And you can see the total water usage within this classification. So for example, condos over this water period used nearly 2,400 gallons of water per day, whereas the single family units used a little over 41,000 gallons of water per day. So what we do is we add up the number of single family residential units, 400. We have the total water usage for that 3-year period in gallons per day, and you simply divide the nearly 50,000 by 400, and it's looking like our sewer unit is going to be equivalent to about 125 gallons per day. So what that means is that if your property in total water usage is using less than the sewer unit, the 124.6 or whatever the final detailed number is, you will be assessed and assigned a single sewer unit. If you use more than that much water, then you will be assessed the multiplier. So if we make this easy and say it's 125 and you use 250 gallons per day, that's equivalent to 2 sewer units. So that is where we're looking at there.
Tim, could I just, how does this compare to Phase 1 sewer unit?
It is higher. I believe the Phase 1 sewer unit was 72,
Yes,
if I remember correctly.
yes.
Yep.
And I think that just reflects the fact that the balance of condos and multifamily units was much higher in Phase 1 than in Phase 2, where it's much more significantly dominated by the single-family classification, which has the higher water usage here, as opposed to what you see in the condos. All right, so now that we know what the sewer unit is, we want to calculate what's the value of that sewer unit. And so that is the total betterment cost of the project divided by the total number of sewer units. So what I've got here is kind of our preliminary accounting. It's kind of a snapshot of our current thinking that identifies the costs associated with Phase 2. That totals nearly $31 million. And this table shows a comparison against what was financed through the SRF project. And that's important because the Cape and Island Trust grant is equivalent to 25% of that SRF financed value. So we take the total cost associated with Phase 2 and subtract out the grant amount to get a total cost to the town. And the current betterment policy is that 20% of the total cost would be assessed through betterments, and the other 80% is on the tax base. So of the $23,600,000, give or take, 20% of that is the $4.7 million. So this is the value that gets spread out amongst all of the property owners based on their assigned sewer units.
Tim, I had a question or two. This was helpful. I actually misunderstood. We talk about the betterment assignment, or the assignment of the cost through betterment to be about the 20%, but it's really after the credit, if you will, for the grant. So the real assignment of costs through betterment is 15% of the actual cost. I misunderstood that. So if you take the total cost of a particular phase, what actually gets assigned for recovery through betterments is 15% of the actual cost, not the 20. But I assume that's how we did it in Phase 1. But
But some of the costs are not included in, some of the costs are not included in the funding. So for instance, police and traffic is a cost that is not SRF funded.
Let me,
It's in the betterment-
let
it's in
me
the
just
betterment
clarify.
calculation.
So these costs here, so SRF pays or finances construction-related costs. So that's really the, these three line items here. And the total for that is less than the 29 because we're able to keep the costs below the financed amount. I want to be careful about saying that we're taking a percentage reduction on this subtotal here, just because it's worked out great that the Cape and Islands Trust grant has been able to do this 25% on the SRF value. But that's how it's been applied to phase one and phase two. I don't know that that is a guarantee for all phases moving forward. So the way it's accounted for is we get the cost that the town has incurred for the phase, and take out any grant amounts. And right now, it's just the Cape and Island Trust grant. If there are other grants that come along in the future, those would be added in here as deductions on the amount that's going to be considered for betterment.
Yeah, thank you. So that's, I followed all that. I'm simply making an observation. I had in my mind that it was 20, but I get it. The other question I had, Tim, is, you know, based upon your experience, observation of other towns, et cetera, that, the actual hard costs, the 22 million versus the engineering construction services of 5, it's roughly a 4-to-1 relationship or ratio, if you will. Is that typical? That,
Yes.
that ratio of actual, I think it's the hard cost to the 22 million, and engineering construction services more engineering. That 4-to-1, is that in line with what you've seen other towns?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right. So now we know that the sewer unit is 124.6. We know how much betterment value that we need to spread around amongst the properties in phase two. So now we need to figure out how many total sewer units there are. So I gave a simple example before, but we can, in case you didn't follow my word salad, here it is on the screen. We look at that total water usage for each individual property. So if a property has 1 meter or if a property has 10 meters, it's the sum of all of those meters for that property, and that's the gallons per day, and you divide it by that 124.6 for that one sewer unit, so that we can get this measure of how much water relative to the rest of the properties does any given property use. And that's how we spread around the cost. So here's another example. So if we have property A, where it's 124.6, they're going to get exactly one sewer unit. If you only use 120 gallons per day, that's less than the one, you're going to be bumped up to the one. If you use a little more than 124.6, you're going to get bumped up to the nearest hundredth. So the calculation says 1.003, so you're going to be assessed 1.01. And then kind of looking at the other side of it, if you use 600, you're going to, it calculates out to 4.815, so you get assessed the 4.82. You add these ones up and you get the 7.83. Does that make sense to everybody?
So far.
Excellent. So now we know how much, so now we get to figure out how much how much is each individual sewer unit worth. So you take the total betterment cost of the projects, and again, we calculated that to be about 4.7 million. And we have our When you go through and do that similar math, we calculated about 600 sewer units, give or take. You divide the 4.7 by the 600, and you get this betterment cost per sewer unit. So that's kind of the lowest betterment associated with the phase two.
Which, Tim, I feel compelled, even though it says it on the screen, I feel compelled to say these are preliminary numbers.
Yes, thank you. I have not been saying that out loud, but whenever I've been showing data that we're calculating, like I said at the beginning, these are, there's still more QA to do, but we think that we're pretty close at this point. But these are still preliminary numbers. Once all these values are finalized, we'll come back before this board and present you with the final information.
Thank you.
Tim, are the 25 units that aren't getting assessed a betterment all undeveloped land?
It's a mix. So
Well,
properties that wouldn't be assessed a betterment include, it's not undeveloped land. Land that can be developed will be assessed a betterment based on kind of the average usage associated with how that property is classified. So if an undeveloped property is going to be developed as a single-family residential, they'll be assigned the average single-family residential sewer units. What's excluded from this are properties that are undevelopable. So, there's either restrictions on them in terms of wetlands nearby. Something about the property says that it will never be sewered. There's never going to be a water use that would translate into a sewer flow. So undevelopable properties, conservation properties, and then also town-owned properties are not assessed a betterment.
So I would take exception with not assessing the town for betterments, but I'll leave that for another day.
Right, that's a different discussion. Okay. Go on,
All right,
Tim.
excellent. So let's get into how this is being spread around. So I like to look at the graph because it's just easier for me to see that. So over on the y-axis of the graph, this is the number of properties within here. So you can see that, over half of the properties are being assessed a single sewer unit. And it falls off pretty quickly, and it's actually a pretty good looking curve if you can superimpose that on the bars here. And then, as you might expect, there are some properties within phase two that do have a higher total water usage. And so that's why you see a little bit of an uptick at the end here. And then if you want to see it in terms of how it's broken out, here's kind of the betterment ranges for these sewer unit ranges, and how many properties are being assessed within this kind of range, and how those add up. So that's how the $4.7 million is being distributed around phase two. I know that there's always questions about how does this compare against phase one, and what does phase one versus phase two look like? So
Actually,
did want to
could I ask
have that information available to you.
Could I ask a question
So-
on that prior slide? So it looks like there are about 10% of the properties that are 3 sewer units and above. What kind of units are those? I'm just curious as to, that you've got 10% of the properties that are obviously going to get much more significant betterment charges. Who are they? I mean, are they 10-unit
Yeah,
houses or 10-bedroom houses, or what are they?
Honestly, I have not looked to see which properties are kind of falling into the if we're looking at 3 and above, it looks like it's about 4% of the properties
No,
are
it's-
getting
it's
3 and
about-
above.
So it's
But
28
yeah, I
units
don't-
out of about
I don't
200 and, maybe 300 units?
Typically, they're, in phase one, they were
Restaurants.
restaurants, laundry, bowling alley, they were businesses.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that
Motels.
some of them may be businesses that have a higher water usage, but I also know that there are some properties in phase 2 that clearly take pride in their landscaping. And that would certainly drive them more than somebody who's using just 125 gallons a day.
So we're going to have sort of the same problem that we had in phase 1, where people that were irrigating and not putting water into the sewer are going to wind up with big betterments?
It is based on total water use.
Correct. All right. So if we are to look at phase 1 versus phase 2, the phase 1 numbers are in blue, the phase 2 are orange. The one on the left is how much of the total betterment is that sewer unit range paying cumulatively. So you can see that, again, in phase 1, we had about, looks like a little over 30% of the total value of the betterment being paid by the single sewer unit users. And that does increase, as you'd expect, as you add more. But then, kind of to your point, there was a pretty significant jump when you look at this last classification, where you go from kind of that high, the everybody else jump here. Whereas you don't see that type of jump here in phase 2. It's just much more of a smooth curve through there. And then in terms of the number of properties, this is similar to the other graph that I showed on the previous slide. The scale just looks a little different because of the number of properties in phase 1. Again, you had a lot of properties, i.e. hundreds of condos, at the one sewer unit that dropped off pretty quickly, and then it flattens out with a number of the higher water users and the businesses out here at the end. And then just kind of doing a side by side, again, to kind of address kind of how people might be feeling about phase 1 betterments versus phase 2. The value of the sewer unit did go up a little bit between phase 1 and phase 2. The highest betterment, there's a pretty big discrepancy there. Again, in phase 1, you had 112 times as much water use as the average single-family unit in phase 1, whereas the discrepancy here is only a 20 to 1 change between the highest and the lowest betterment being assessed. And in both phase 1 and phase 2, the average betterment is right around 1.5 to 2, and the median betterment, i.e. if you were to string out each of the betterment lists in a row and you pick the one right in the middle, what would that betterment be? In both phases, that was 1.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks. That was a good preliminary understanding of what's going on. Are there questions, commissioners?
So Tim,
Could you,
yeah,
Kevin, go ahead.
I was asking a question.
I know, I'm
Oh.
saying, Kevin, please go ahead.
Okay, so Tim, I don't have all the, the data from phase 1, but just to handle this conversationally, right? If you go to page 12 that you were just on, the lowest betterment, or the cost for just one sewer unit, it's up 41%. phase two of a phase one. Just conversationally, without having the data, what drives that? Is it the composition of the properties in phase two? Was it the costs being different phase one, phase two?
Number of properties, too.
Is the
Yeah.
number of properties?
900
Yeah,
Well,
as
it's,
opposed to 4-something. Twice as many properties.
And the costs, the total pool in phase one, does anyone recall what that was?
900.
yeah, so it was about 900 betterments that were sent out. I think what
No,
what
I
you
mean the
s-
total, if you go back to page 7, the total cost in for phase two is 23, not 30.9 million. What was that for phase one?
I think it was over 60 million.
60.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Anything-
20% was 11 million something. though.
correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah, so
other-
the value bettered was about 11, just a little over 11, if I recall.
Any other questions, commissioners? Yes.
Tim, and maybe, and Rich as well, the timeline for firming numbers and the rollout of the information to a broader audience.
I'm not going to put words in Tim's mouth. I think the goal was that we were going to have a betterment meeting, a public meeting in September, and I believe that's still the target that we're going for. Tim, you could probably finalize or at least identify when we think we'll have a finalized number for the total construction cost where we can finalize the betterments.
And then
Yeah, I mean-
part two would be the reminding us about when do they actually get the letters, the actual levying of the actual betterment, reminding us.
So why don't we let Tim explain just the next steps that we'll go through?
So let's see. So the next steps are, we're gonna, couple last questions to be resolved, just to really dial in and get to the final numbers. At that point, we basically have kind of a preliminary betterment list that we work with the town and town's council to make sure that all of the property information is correct and appropriate for recording the betterments. And then that will be brought back, I believe, to the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners and then to the Select Board for final approval. At that point, the lists of betterments will be recorded and the town will basically put together a letter with some information about what the betterment is and the different payment options are for that.
So,
That's kind of the steps.
so for phase one, we had a joint meeting in the summer, last summer? Last summer before. So
Yeah.
are we still probably targeting summer of '27?
I mean, I think that honestly, the town is ahead of where we were in phase one. We're we weren't having this discussion in the equivalent timeframe after phase one. And I think really what it comes down to is the water use record is set. It's just a matter of finalizing the construction values and the costs associated with phase two.
That's great, that's great. Anything else, commissioners? Yes, Tim?
So I understand how you did all the calculations, and, I'm sure the math is right. But I think this is a flawed approach, and clearly it differs based on where you live in town. It differs based on whether you irrigate. I personally think that this is a flawed approach. I understand that this is sort of locked in for phase two, but but I think it's not necessarily an equitable approach to allocating the betterment charges.
And that is a perfect segue to our next discussion.
I know there's a couple more questions.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions. Right on time. Thank you. This is my first time dealing with this, the Phase 2 stuff, and I just had a couple of comments. The sewer unit in general is very confusing to me. I know that that's what we use. I don't know why we can't just talk about gallons per day like we did in Title V, but that's just something to point out that's just very confusing to me. I noticed that Tim over here mentioned vacant lots, and to me, a vacant lot getting a betterment is a little bit of an issue. One of the things that we try to do in Orleans is to have open space. So if I were lucky enough to have a vacant lot next to me that I owned, that I didn't want to build on, I'd have to pay a betterment on it, which is significant. If somewhere in the future somebody decided they wanted to build on that lot, let them pay whatever the betterment might be worked out at that time. So vacant lots, we're certainly not encouraging people to hold on to vacant lots by giving them additional costs just to keep that lot vacant. On my own properties, I own a condominium unit that has no water use. It's a basement, and it had a betterment charge. Doesn't make sense to me. Again, if it were going to be developed in some way, let the future developer pay the betterment on that cost. It was significant. So that was just one thing. The other thing, as I understand it, with the final betterment cost of one sewer unit was $5,500 in Phase 1 and $7,800, $7,900 in Phase 2. Does that mean, in effect, that the same little three-bedroom house in the downtown area, if it's taken to the Phase 2 area, is going to pay 42% more betterment? Okay.
Depends on how the sewer unit works out.
Under this,
The only thing I would throw on top of that is that I don't know of any property owner that's got 42% more money available to pay for that betterment than he did 3 years ago.
I just want to,
Kevin?
I'm aligned with your observation, which is why I asked, conversation, how do you explain this? Because, and we did that, it was based upon the number of units, Phase 1, Phase 2, the costs, et cetera. But it is, I think, an appropriate observation and something we can maybe talk about further in the next agenda item.
And, yeah, okay. And just one other, maybe it's a little sidelight.
Yes.
The Title V septic system loan program, can that be extended to also work for sewer connections? Does anybody know?
I think it
The Aqua Fund?
I don't know, but
The Aqua Fund does.
the Aqua Fund
cover
does, yes.
Sewer connections.
Okay.
For residential properties only.
Okay,
And condominiums.
If they're of a certain
they're-
structure,
right,
they have to
right.
qualify in a narrow
Right.
band.
Yes.
that's the county fund, is now called the Aqua
Aqua
Fund.
Fund, yeah.
So, but remember too, a difference in part from Phase 1 and Phase 2 for our little cottage is that, remember that part of the factor in this is increased water use. So these different sized properties in part have bigger water use in Phase 2 on average than in Phase 1. So that's another factor. It's, I'm not necessarily saying it's explaining the whole 42%, but maybe they're irrigating and Phase 1 didn't, that kind of thing. So lots of factors included in the calculation.
It's a good observation.
Right. So, yeah, different animals. But that all informs us for our next presentation. Yes?
Just a quick one, only because I've been with you on this before Phase 1. I've heard comments that I think are going to be repeated, and I just, again, I'll bore you with the reminder that the Select Board, when it put in place and voted Phase 1 and Phase 2 with this bylaw methodology, it is a bylaw that we put in place in lieu of Chapter 83 of Massachusetts state law chapters. That would have been our way to go. And I'm looking at Tim particularly, if you read it, this is where sewer units come in. This is where all this lingo that we're trying to work in a way that is as fair and equitable as possible, yet it has a hairball all around it. I just have to say that, so,
And I understand that.
yeah.
I guess I'm not all that interested most times in what we have to do under the state. It's like, what could we be doing if we didn't get all balled up?
Yeah, if our bylaw departed from the logic of the state is a betterment is a one-time hit, it's a recording on the property because they believe at the time the sewer is said to be in service, total cost assessed, your property is bettered. At that time, however the state is, except for conservation properties and municipal properties are exempt. That is the law, you guys, so, it's,
So maybe things have to move beyond here.
oh, that's really gonna happen?
See where that-
I'll leave you on that note.
So, thank you, Tim, for your presentation. We'll look forward to more information.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on, which we sort of have already, to a betterment bylaw presentation from Dan Pelletier. It's a conversation on future betterment calculations. Welcome, Dan.
So while Dan's getting set up, I'll just introduce, I know we got a couple of new members on here, but we just had a little preliminary of what the discussion's going to be. We had talked about the betterment bylaw for some time now, particularly as we work through phase one. We've heard some comments from the public. We've heard some, issues with commercial properties, and we were trying to make sure that the direction that this town's going, because we got 16 phases of planned sewer construction, that the direction that we're going is the right direction. So we wanted to do a review of the betterment bylaw now that we have sewer construction in place. We're going through the process, and just to make sure that, what we have in place does align with other communities, and is there any adjustments that we could make now that would help those future phases that we're planning for? In addition into this discussion, we'll also talk about the 80-20 split. We'll talk a little bit about that because of the equity of each phase as we go. You hinted to it a little bit. Each phase is going to be a little more money. It's going to be more costly, and probably less properties. And then there's going to be, a equivalent sewer unit that's going to probably get much higher than what they are in the early phases. So how do we head that off, and how do we kind of gauge that right now? So we're trying to forward think, what we're going to do in future phases, but also assess what our current betterment bylaw is right now. So we put together a team. I think we presented this to you, maybe a year ago or so, that we're putting together a team to review proposals, to come in, for a consultant to come in, review our betterment bylaw, and basically give us some information on, what other towns are doing and whatnot. So Dan Pelletier was hired from Waterworks, and he's been working on this project for a year with this subgroup made of finance committee members, economic development members, member of the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners, members of the Select Board, members of the WMAC, all kind of giving Dan information to regurgitate, what we're gonna do, with the betterment bylaw in the future. So with that, I'm gonna leave it up to Dan to kind of go through this presentation, and we'll be happy to answer questions at that point.
So could I clarify, this is a discussion and the first step of many towards putting together a betterment plan?
This is the preliminary findings for further discussion. Yes, thank you.
So we're not making any decisions today, it's just discussion. Dan?
Good. All right. Awesome. Thank you for having me. Again, name's Dan Pelletier with Waterworks Consulting. So today it's kind of high level. As indicated, this is the start of what will likely turn into many lengthy discussions on what the town of Orleans is going to do with their betterments in the future. But if I can just begin by reviewing kind of the scope of what I was brought in to look at, and what that ultimately means. So we were looking at the current sewer bylaw and trying to understand, does the 80% tax-supported 20% betterment approach really make sense to carry forward beyond phases 1 and 2? We wanted to look at those phase 1 lessons learned. What does that tell us about transparency, outliers, property owner burdens? Those are really looking to inform our priorities for the work group during this scope of work, is where do we want to focus our intent and changes or tentative changes to the policy. And additionally, I also conducted a peer community survey that involved 12 peer communities to the town of Orleans to look at where they were at with their wastewater program and what their funding strategy and methods were. So as Richard said, we had representatives from DPW, administration, the Board of Water Sewer Commissioners, Finance Committee, Select Board, Economic Development, as well as the town's engineer, AECom, participated. And we had 3 meetings beginning back in January. Most recent one prior to this was on July 30th. And what we had identified with that work group and some major takeaways were that we need earlier, clear parcel level information. There were some big feelings and concerns expressed about not knowing what the intended betterment would be up and until after construction was completed. So some of those betterment values came across as a surprise. Another concern, and you guys had kind of touched on it in your preliminary discussions, was disparity or variability in the betterment cost to the individual property owners as the life of the program matures. Again, that equity over the life of the wastewater program. So of the 12 peer communities that we looked at, I would say there was 7 of them that were currently or previously implementing betterments. 2 of them were currently tax supported but considering betterments in the future, and 3 of those were purely 100% tax funded.
Can I ask a question? Rich, how would you want to proceed? If we have some questions or want clarification as we go kind of page by page, say something, or just wait till the end and ask kind of more substantive questions then, because it's such a preliminary place we are?
I'm okay with questions. Hopefully I'll be able to answer them.
It's all up to the presenter. If he's okay, willing just to take on questions in the middle of the presentation, I think that's fine as well. So if you see something, raise your hand.
Anything before I move on?
So this just gets to whether they have betterments or not, this slide. This slide.
Yes. So what's on the screen now ultimately is that those are the 12 communities that were surveyed, and then underneath each of them is kind of the funding strategy that they have.
It's a very high level. It doesn't get into the,
But he wrote a rather
Yeah.
detailed report that goes through chapter and verse, multiple pages for each of the towns.
okay, can we get that?
Yes, to that point, so as part of this, there's an executive summary, a historic document on the town of Orleans, as well as a peer community survey document. The whole report's about 100 pages, 108 pages, that I think was distributed, or if not, I can certainly make sure everyone has copies of it.
We'll get you the copy if you don't have a copy. It's a very in-depth report that I thought we sent out to the board, but maybe not. But this up here, this screen right here, is basically what every other town is doing, to pay for their sewer construction. What's their methodology? You look at Provincetown, that says betterment-based, it's 100% betterment-based, so.
Right, but it doesn't get to the details of how they do the betterments, right? It doesn't get to the fact that, I think it's, $9,000 a bedroom or $7,000 a bedroom in P-Town? Right? That's their methodology, right? This doesn't get at the methodology, it just gets at whether they have betterments or not.
Methodology is described further in the greater report. Ultimately, what you can, if you're looking up at the screen, you can see, an SEU policy, that's a sewer equivalent unit, or Wareham uses an equivalent dwelling unit. So those are all methods that they're using to convert water use or Title V flows into a sewer unit, similar to Orleans. So what I can say after talking to all 12 of those communities is that there isn't a ton of consistency. Although some of them are using betterments, they're using them in different ways. Some are establishing a betterment for a single-family property and then using a conversion to convert commercial property water use into equivalent dwelling units, similar to how Orleans is doing it. Again, as I mentioned, there's 2 towns that are currently tax supported, but likely going to be considering betterments in the future, and then 3 of which are fully tax funded. And the big takeaway is, Orleans, although unique, is some pretty consistent with what the other communities are doing. I will say you are an outlier in that it's direct water use. There's more of a consistency with Title V flows, but I would argue that the water use and the methodology you guys have employed is not out of line with neighboring communities. So based on the work group discussions, peer community surveys, as I just mentioned, Orleans' current betterment approach is consistent with those used by comparable communities, and I don't believe that it warrants a wholesale overhaul of your existing bylaw. That said, as you guys had discussed momentarily, and we had great discussions with the work group, is that there is potential for disparity between betterments between phases. I link that to the fact that you are fixing a 20% cost to be bettered and 80% to be borne on the tax base. Ultimately, there's some things, phase differences like property density, water use, hard digging. A low pressure system, for example, is not going to get dug 15, 20 feet into the ground, so it's a cheaper installation. So things like that, if you maintain a fixed 20% split, could lend itself to disparity in betterments between phases. So that was one of the big things that we were trying to address with outputs from this scope of work, as well as improving transparency. So in the interest of improving transparency, the recommendation is to adopt a public-facing GIS map. Up on the screen you can see, and this would be ultimately developed for the build-out of the remaining wastewater program. That said, I understand that there's a lot of contingencies and caveats that would have to go into trying to project this out, but I think in the public's interest and desire to have some understanding of what their tentative betterment is going to be, that could be accomplished with a landing page. Click yes if you've read, the above, so that you know that people viewing this are ultimately understanding the caveats and exceptions.
I have a question, if you don't mind. So thank you, because that's was my, the one main point I wanted to understand a little bit better. And it's because of, the presentation that preceded this, when we went from, had a 41% increase in the, call it the standard unit, if I will. And I said, okay, what's gonna happen in between now and 16 and blah, blah, blah. And then when I went through your material, to Tim's observation, now I get it, right? This is more of a summary by town as to what other towns are doing, and there's a more detailed report someplace else. Because what I was curious about is exactly that. And have there been any towns on the Cape who have dealt with that, or had proceeded this way? And, because I like this personally, and have any other towns done what you're proposing or suggesting?
I don't know that anyone has one built
Okay.
out for the full CWMP wastewater program. What I would say I found interesting throughout this scope as well was to understand how far behind some of the communities are. You guys are moving into phase 3. There are still a number of communities out there who have maybe some legacy wastewater systems, but they're still redoing their CWMP, working on their watershed permit, and are not actively putting pipes in the ground. Wareham, for example, Bourne, for example, has an existing collection system, but they're really overhauling their CWMP right now and don't have, even the phases laid out to be able to produce such a map. What I would say is the map does kind of dovetail nicely with the proposed target index policy that we're gonna jump into.
Before you get to that one, I do want to just mention, we have been working on a sewer database. The sewer database is a GIS-based database where we have every parcel identified. We know how they're going to be served by sewer, particularly the ones that are, phase one that's already been constructed. But we can easily identify which phase that they're going to be in each property. And I believe there's enough information out there to put together exactly what Dan's saying, which is an anticipated betterment cost, with that big disclaimer down at the bottom that basically says, this is an estimate based on today's dollars or, today's projection of what phase 16 is going to look like, estimated construction costs, and what your water use records have been for the past 3 years. So as we continue to work on that database, which is starting to come along, we'll start looking into, okay, can we implement something like this? Can that be something that can be done? Because I will say that's been the crux of most of the information that we get is how much is it going to cost me? I want to start preparing now for what it's going to cost me in the future. What can I do? This is one of those target adjustments that we can make.
I would say not exactly the same, but similar. I had implemented a GIS map in the town of Harwich for sewer bills. One of the big questions that I used to get a lot was, what is my sewer bill going to cost? So I developed a map that took the average 3 years of water use by quarter, applied the sewer rate so anyone could log in, navigate to their property, click, and they could see what their anticipated quarterly sewer bill would be. So analogous to that, but a little bit in greater detail for the betterment.
Hi, we've had zero flexibility to alter the whole betterment scheme for phases 1 and 2. It was 80-20, and that's accepted. Going forward from phase 3, I've thought that if we want to think about equity or some sort of balance, obviously inflation adjusted going forward, phases 3, 4, et cetera. One way to do that is to work with the betterment, the sewer unit values that we have. Phase 1, 5,500. Phase 2, 7,800. If we were to say that the rough average of those two would be a good, acceptable, politically acceptable, fair number to work from going forward, then you work your whole 80-20, whatever the ratio is, back. It could be 90-10, it could be 60-40.
You just gave the presentation for me.
Are you sure you didn't get the report?
Oh, I'm sorry, I've been thinking about this for months, and I've been waiting for the opportunity.
Yeah,
That's what it does.
That's where I was going. I was gonna let you get to it, but I was curious, have other towns employed that kind of a methodology is what I was curious about, because to me, it's sensible. And then you just inflation adjust it, so when you get to phase 15 in 10 years, you inflation adjust what the value was today, and that's it.
Precisely.
So now that you know how this story ends, let's let Tim tell the rest of the story.
I'm sorry, I confess, I didn't read this before the meeting, sorry.
No worries.
That was perfect.
No worries.
That was perfect.
To your question, I would say the most analogous peer community would be Falmouth. They appear to be reevaluating their betterment cost split at each phase with concerns of equity. So this would be more in line with how they've been handling their betterments over the last several construction phases. It took the wind out of my sails with the.
It's perfect.
So again, on the presentation, and we kind of talked on some of the drivers that may cause the sewer unit cost to vary between phases. Again, those are things like pipe length, pump stations, subsurface conditions, treatment plant, effluent recharge site construction, future treatment plant construction and improvement. So all of those sorts of things could lend itself to disparity if maintaining that 20% moving forward.
And just one small question, sorry. So what, two words kind of piqued my interest on this page, or the previous page, sorry, under outside financing. Principal forgiveness, what is that?
So that would be the Cape and Islands Protection Fund, the
Okay.
25%.
Okay.
There's also like disadvantaged communities programs and things of that nature where you
Okay,
can
I
get.
thought maybe other towns had found a way to get some principal forgiven or something.
I'll be sure to let you know if I
Yeah,
find.
please.
So ultimately, the recommendation born out of the work group in this project scope was to adopt what we're referring to as a target index betterment policy. And what that policy seeks to do is to average the sewer unit cost from phases 1 and 2, and then escalate those for the cost of inflation moving out to the later phases, so that everyone ultimately pays a respective, equitable betterment cost per sewer unit as phases 1 and phase 2.
And that could result in 100% being carried by tax. Or, I mean, virtually 100%.
It could, in the future, could result in a 93.7% better.
Yeah.
You know, and it could go the other way too.
Yes, of course.
You know, if you have a full section of town that's low pressure, you know, under the current 20%.
Be lower cost.
Right, right.
Okay.
But that way, everyone is paying their respective equitable share. So again, how this is intended to work would be establishing that average baseline sewer unit, adjusting for that construction cost inflation. Should the town move forward with a policy, you know, similar to this, my recommendations would be at the onset of the policy to develop, to identify the indexes that you would look for construction cost inflation. One that's commonly used is the ENR index. That's what a lot of the engineering firms are using to identify what treatment plant and collection system costs would be. We would then, for each particular phase, you would apply, you know, the baseline adjusted sewer unit times the total sewer units, and then back into that percentage split. We're still proposing in this, at least currently, to continue using that 3-year average water use. Existing betterment bylaw really remains our starting framework, and would be looking to incorporate language into the bylaw that would allow for a betterment policy to be adopted and then implemented outside the bylaw, so that you guys could go through this review on a phase-by-phase basis without having to go back to the state and bylaw changes.
During abatement hearings for phase 1, an awful lot of the requests for relief came from the fact that, you know, in the owner's perspective, say 30% of my water was used for irrigation. That's not going through the sewer system. Why should I pay for that? How are we going to deal with that issue going forward, other than having deduct meters like we have now, but kind of people find out about those after the fact? Oh, if I had a deduct meter, my betterment would be this. And so how are we going to deal with that issue, which I think was probably the biggest abatement issue amongst the 40 or 50 people that came in?
Been really racking and I totally understand the question, the disparity, the potential for disparity that it causes. I mean, absent abandoning the bylaw methodology employed for phase 1 and phase 2 and really rewriting, you know, the direction you guys are heading.
So, Bob, I'll add to that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, if someone's using it for irrigation, it's going to be built on your betterment. That's the way that the bylaw is written.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Now, one of the things that we had encountered during those abatement process were, I did experience a leak during this period, did not know about it. It spiked it up, but my average was a lot different. I would like to explore potentially creating an overlay budget, which is something that where we can apply an abatement for extreme circumstances. And that's something I'll continue to explore to see what kind of avenue we could have versus the answer we had to give, which was no to everyone. This is the way it is, but we need to understand that there are extenuating circumstances. We need to raise a certain amount of funds to pay for the debt that we incurred. So how can we still pay for that debt incurred and apply an abatement when appropriate? So I'll work with Tim on that, on those approaches to say, how can we do it? But let's be clear. If you're just using it for irrigation, and it's a standard thing, it's going to show up on your betterment. It's just the way that the bylaw is written as it is.
Yeah, so I think I am hearing that we don't want to change the bylaw, and that's sort of going to set the way that we do this. But I actually believe that the bylaw is flawed, and that we should be rethinking the way we do betterments. So, for example, the bylaw discriminates against year-round occupancy, right? I mean, people who are here in the wintertime or for 12 months of the year instead of 4 months of the year are using more water. They're going to get a higher betterment charge. Families, say a couple with 3 kids compared to a single person in a house, right, is going to use 5 times as much water. We're discriminating against those sectors of the community that I think we value the most. I think, and again, this irrigation issue, I think, I clearly don't want people irrigating, right? I don't want to use a lot of water that way, but I think we should do that by charging them more for their water as opposed to charging them a sewer fee, right? That's not, that's apples and oranges. So I personally, and I've done a fair amount of research over the last week, in anticipation of seeing how this was going. And I didn't have a chance to look at this really until today. But I think we should be thinking about, as P-Town does and as the vast majority of towns do, doing something that's, fixed on number of bedrooms or something as simple, and that inflation adjusts number of bedrooms, dollars per bedroom over time, and you're done, and it's simple, and people know what the number is going to be. And it doesn't get into all this complexity of how you calculate what's occurring on that site over this 3-year period versus what the betterment to the property is worth, right? The betterment to the property. I mean, a family of 6 can buy a house, next year that got a betterment fee when there was a single person living in it. And the next year it can go the other way. I mean, I just think that the betterment is a value that the property gets based on, and we referred to Title V usage, which is bedroom-based, right? It really, that to me is much more consistent with the way the rest of the world is doing it. I mean, when I did my research, I couldn't find anybody that used a year-round average. There were communities that used a winter-only average of water use because of the irrigation issue, but I couldn't find any community that used a year-round water usage. The predominant way of allocating betterments was based on bedrooms, frontage, square feet of area. I mean, but bedrooms seem to be the simplest and the most commonly used. So I just want to go on record as saying I think we should be thinking about this differently. We shouldn't be trying to protect the existing betterment bylaw that we have. We should be thinking about what we want to do that's going to be equitable across the town, going out for the next 16 phases.
I think we prefaced in the beginning of the presentation that we think this will be the start of many conversations because of how this is accepted, how it's received. I think that the basis is that there is no one adopted way that is adopted through the county.
But I see one recommended, I don't see, here are the 10 ways that different communities have done this. I see a recommendation that seems to already have been predetermined as to this is the path we're going down. I don't see this as being a wide open analysis of the way it's done, and I see this as being fairly narrow already.
Can we let Dan finish his presentation?
Sorry.
Okay.
And I guess just a couple points, right? And I very much understand the point. I guess what I would say, or just a couple components, is that ultimately your treatment plant, your effluent recharge sites, your pipe diameters, those were all based off, and Tim, if you're still online, correct me if I'm wrong, but those are ultimately based off of 90% of water use totals. They generally afford a 10% consumptive use, for design. So although the water may not be going into that collection system, it was designed to handle it because of that individual property's use. So there is a relationship between that water use and construction cost and so on. I would say even the proposed policy would require bylaw revisions that would go through town meeting because the current bylaw fixes an 80-20% split. So to adopt a adjustable sewer unit cost methodology moving forward from phases 3 and beyond would require amendment to the bylaw. What I would just say is if there is discussion, future discussion about abandoning the average water use methodology and converting to, Title V or some other mechanism, that great consideration be given to phase 1 and phase 2, and understand as part of that process, if you went back and reran your calculations for phase 1 and phase 2, what would it look like for those property owners? And if there is a disparity, how is that resolved? Because I think you open yourself up to liability if you flip the methodology and then don't look back. So that was one component. Beyond,
Well, probably one of the most significant components.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as to how to handle,
Yeah.
how to look back. Another equity component that came up, at least in peer communities, and I don't know if you've evaluated yet to date, what the percentage of grinder pumps or low-pressure sewers there will be throughout the build-out of your program. But there's at least 3 other communities that have had public outpouring and concerns over the cost or equity surrounding properties designated as having a grinder pump because of the additional expense to purchase the pump, as well as a lot of properties are putting in generators and electrical improvements to facilitate that sewer connection type. So Harwich, Falmouth, and Chatham have also adopted either a policy, stipend, or reimbursement, or procuring the pump for the property owner in certain instances. So that may be something that the town wants to look at for the remaining, you say, 16 phases? To consider. So I guess that's
Okay,
concludes the presentation.
that's great. Yes, Mark?
I would urge you to look for examples, God forbid, off the Cape, because I don't really think that there's really much differences between these towns. I mean, there are other ways to do it. When I talk to people about this business, what is it going to cost me to live here, and can I do it? And is this fair and equitable? And the greatest example is the 8,000 square foot, $9 million house with the infinity pool that is only used 3 weeks a year, as opposed to the 3-room cottage with the 4 kids in it. And that's a screaming inequality. And I think that in another factor in this is you have to look at the real estate taxes that are generated on the houses and factor that in terms of the total cost, you know, to the homeowner, especially the ones who live here on a permanent basis, because basically you spend so much energy, spiritual energy, trying to create affordable housing, and you say we want people who work here to live here and so forth. We want young children and so forth. But this methodology to me doesn't work. I think the whole thing's going to go crashing down on a tax rate. I don't know what phase it's going to be in, but I don't pretend to have some of the financial skills of some of the other people here. But if that number of 15,000 per sewer unit is an indication on one end, when we started with 5, and now we're going to 7, and we're going to get to 15, by the time we're at, what, 2068? I can't even contemplate what it's going to be. So I guess what I'm saying, and I'm pleading, this isn't really working. It doesn't work for me because it sounds in such fundamental inequality to the people who live here. And, I for one say, I know it's not on the general tax rate, and I know the people who don't get the benefit of the sewer system, man, they're getting a benefit of a financial break. And you were all talking about the same water that surrounds us that you're trying to preserve. So why you tying this to 3 years of flow and trying to dice it and split it and divide it in terms of irrigation and back charge it in terms of flow irrigation meters and deduct it? I mean, to me, that's like an administrative nightmare to accomplish that.
Thank you.
So I'm making a public plea to just look at this through the eye of somebody who sits around a kitchen table trying to meet their costs.
Thank you, Mark, for your comments. I would like to thank Dan for coming in and giving us a preview of his body of work. I think next step is to get the full report out to the Board of Water and Sewer, and to establish,
Yeah, I think we obviously get the report out, put this on another agenda, continue the discussion, which way we want to go. Maybe we can give you some more scenarios of other options that are out there, because I think at the end of the day, no option's perfect. If we go Title V, there's problems associated with that. You go with frontage, there's problems associated with that. So it's, probably an understanding of just laying out what those different challenges are of ways of assessing a betterment. In terms of the seasonality of this town, it's something that we're all facing on the Cape, and I think that's why it's so challenging to find one consistent system that works across all the peer communities. I think they're all trying to find the right balance of what it is. I will say that, I think that the target of the usage should be something that we do with the rates and the user rates, the treatment rates. Betterment and the construction, that's another thing, and I think we need to identify them as two separate things. This is the construction cost to expand, and this is the treatment cost, for you to have that $10 million house, or, us to have that infrastructure that serves that 10-bedroom house. And so I think we got to kind of define what those differences are, and we can kind of work towards that. And maybe the next meeting we'll continue to have these conversations, say, which direction do we want to go?
Great, thank you very much. Tim, briefly, because we're already at 2:30.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say two things. I think your approach at least normalizes or attempts to normalize across the different phases, and I think that's a good thing, right? So that is something that I've been very concerned about, and I think this at least is a step in that direction. At the same time, to Mark's point, the taxpayer is paying for 80% of this, and so those people with that big house in the infinity pool are actually paying quite a bit more on their tax base, and that has been a big worry to me as somebody really interested in long-range capital planning, because I do worry that all these charges are going to wind up on the tax rate, and that is going to be a huge burden. I worry that it's going to swamp out other capital projects in town, and we're just at the beginning of seeing that stuff hit us. So I agree with you that we should be charging those people, and I think we are through the tax rate.
Lots to think about. Thank you very much.
I would just say you're not alone.
Yes, I know.
Everyone's struggling with the same thing.
Right, except Harwich that doesn't have a betterment. They just put it on the tax rolls. So there you go.
Chatham as well, yeah. But there's a lot of problems with that
Yes,
as
there
well,
are problems
'cause-
with all of it. It's just trying to mitigate and
Thank you.
find the fewest. Our next order of business is the minutes of July 15th, 2026. Lynn sent me a couple of de minimis corrections. Anybody else? Could I get a motion?
Move to approve?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, please.
I, Tim Coonahan.
Hi, Jack Hadzer.
Bob Rich.
Hi, Jenny Farber.
Kevin Mahoney?
Mark Person, aye.
Tim Brady, aye.
Great, 700. Okay, our next is additional allocated flow for 41 Main Street. I know Todd's been here for a long time. Thank you for your patience. Sue?
Yes, 41 Main Street is looking for a added flow of 10,000, I gotta find the page, here we go. 10,510 gallons per day. At a 60% for sewer would be 6,306 gallons per day.
Okay,
There would be, the application fee has been paid, and it would equate to an additional allocated flow of $486, $752.66.
okay. Commissioners?
Good evening.
Oh, hello.
I'm sorry. For the record, Raul Sardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant. So yeah, I'm just available if the board has any questions. But the whole thing is that the new owner, which is 41 Main Street Orleans LLC, acquired the property at the end of 2024, and they plan to do some improvements on the property, which will require additional flows. So we based the calculations for the additional flow on Title V, and we're asking this commission to approve that expected additional flow.
Okay, great. Any other staff comments? Questions from the board? Get a motion?
Move to approve the additional allocated flow
For 41 Main
for
Street?
41 Main Street.
Second, any other discussion? All those in favor?
I, Tim Coonahan.
Hi, Jack Hadzer.
I, Bob Rich.
Hi, Jenny Farber.
I'm Mark Person.
Tim?
Oh, I, Tim Brady.
Okay, 700. Thank you. Thanks
The only thing I'll need
Thanks for
from the-
waiting.
Excuse me. The
Thanks.
only thing I'll need from the applicant is if they want to allocate the additional allocated flow charges over the remainder of 30-year betterment time, or if it'll be paid.
Probably not a question for me, but can I get back on that?
You can.
Okay, great, thank you.
This is for 41 Main Street?
Yes.
Next is additional allocated flow for 18 Cole Place. Thank you for your patience as well. I've actually been out to the house wearing my Conscom hat.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Conservation,
Yeah.
yes. We had the approval done.
Yes.
That was great.
Yeah.
Appreciate the approval, thank you. Basically, I'm here to request seek an increase in flow for improvements on a new home that I'm gonna be constructing at 18 Cole Place.
Okay, so that's in phase 2, which means we can't tell him how much.
What the allocated cost will be at this time.
Right, so what is he asking for?
So it's an existing 3-bedroom home. They're looking to build a 4-bedroom home, so it would be an additional bedroom, which would be an additional 66 gallons per day.
Okay, and you're okay with not knowing what the betterment's going to be on that?
I'm fine with that. I don't believe I've even received a betterment.
You haven't yet? No, nothing?
You haven't, but there will be
There will
an
be.
addition to that betterment for the added bedroom.
Can't wait for that.
Okay, great. So could I get a motion? I have to make somebody happy.
Okay, motion to permit the additional allocated flow for 18 Cole Place.
Second?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor by roll?
Aye, Tim Coonahan.
I, Jack Hadzick.
Hi, Bob Rich.
Jenny Farber?
I'm Mark Person.
Hi, Tim Brady.
Okay, great. Thank you. 700.
Thank you. Could I ask a question to the board? It's a comment on the irrigation issue on the betterments. Am I allowed to ask a question on that?
Yes, but that doesn't mean you're gonna get an answer.
I was just curious, I know there's a deduct meter that you're allowed to put now on your property. I too was charged for,
That doesn't help for irrigation, it helps for your sewer bill.
right, that was more or less my question.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if the residents have been notified towards the future that they can put on a deduct meter to alleviate that extra.
It still would not affect your
Betterment.
water bill and betterment, it would affect your sewer bill.
Right.
Because then it separates the water out, so you're not paying for the water that is not going in the sewer, but you are paying for the water that you use.
Understood. But I guess what I'm saying is 3 years from now, I know that you go back and average it for the 3 years. If you had a deduct meter on for the next 3 years.
The 3 years is 23 to 25, so the 3 years is already set. Okay?
But for future phases,
Yeah, future
what I'm
phases.
future phases,
Future phase.
if you put on the deduct meter ahead of time,
That's,
Folks
yeah.
that aren't aware of it right
It's
now.
TBD. It's, right now, it does not affect your betterment, it affects your sewer bill.
She's not answering the question.
Yeah, I guess,
No.
yeah.
Well,
I
she,
think the question is, are people being notified of the opportunity to affect the future?
no, sounds like no.
And the answer is no.
I don't know.
Thank you.
For
Put your
coming in.
deduct meter on as soon as you
Oh, I
can.
have them.
It's a good observation, that's something, we will follow up.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Vote to shut off water for failure to repair / retest backflow devices. Sue?
So according to Commonwealth of Mass regulations and our bylaw, any backflow device that fails a test must repair and have it retested within 14 days. We have one property in town with a failed backflow device that has gone far beyond the 14 days. So I'm looking for your permission to send them a shut-off notice. It is a business.
Okay. And they have been notified previously that they needed to make the repairs? Okay.
We-
Motion to allow Sue to send a shut-off notice to the property in question.
Yes.
Can I get a second, then I'll, Mark? I was calling, did you have something you wanted to say?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, any questions?
I don't understand what we're voting on.
We're voting to send a letter telling the customer that we will shut off his water on September.
We don't have
Well,
any
you can pick a
information on
date.
that.
We can pick it October 1st. Let's make
I
sure
know
it's
that
a
they've been
date.
notified a number of times. They're well overdue.
Okay, but I'm just saying, in the packet, there wasn't a specific piece of
No.
information on
It's
this
just an
one.
agenda item.
There's not, no.
Okay, that's my confusion, because we did have it on the other topic, but not on that.
Correct. There's
Okay,
not
so
really
this is
anything
our-
to give you. I have a failed test I could show you, but that's about it.
Is it also to
Is it a warning shot over
enable
the
the
bow?
business to be anonymous? Or what? Because.
I was just
we-
trying to be kind to the business, but
Yeah, I have no problem. I just didn't know why we didn't know what address it was.
You need to.
if you need to know the address, I'd be glad to give
I
it.
don't think we need to know the address.
No?
I
No, we
don't think so.
So I
No,
seconded it.
wouldn't change anything. So I have a motion and a second. No more questions?
Hi, Tim Cunahan.
Hi, Jack Hadzick.
Hi, Bob Rich.
Hi, Jenny Farber.
I'm Mark Person.
Hi, Tim Brady.
Great. We have a vote to shut off commercial properties for non-payment.
So we've submitted to, we've mailed out letters to all customers who are in arrears of over a year. Residential customers are notified that we'll place a lien against the property and give them a date to pay by, after which we will lien the property. I will bring that lien list to you for a vote. The board, a number of years ago, voted to shut off any commercial properties and not lien them. So this is the few, I gave you the letters with a shut-off date of September 1st.
So this is for a number of properties in arrears.
Yeah, we will only be shutting off commercial and only those that haven't paid by September 1st.
Well, hopefully they'll pay by September 1st.
And just, so they've been warned in prior communications, how much time, like a month or so, or?
Yeah, we sent the letter, a copy of the letter's in your packet. We sent it on July 31st.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Certified mail.
So they're being given a month to,
Yes. Prior to the September 1st date, we will go out
somewhere.
and hand them a door tag and paint the shut-off valve blue.
Just in the-
And beyond that, after September 1st, we will shut it off.
I mean, some of this is ginormous. I mean, this is, okay.
See,
All right, wow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, so a motion to send shut-off letters to the commercial properties as identified by Sue Brown.
Okay, for non-payment. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Hi, Tim Cunahan.
hi, Jack Hadzick.
Hi, Bob Rich.
Hi, Jenny Farber.
I'm Mark Person.
Hi, Tim Brady.
700. And commitments, abatements, and refunds.
You have before you 2 abatements for the Town of Orleans. There are 2 properties that were purchased by the Town of Orleans. Well, actually, one was demolished during the Rock Harbor construction project. So there is no building, there is no water. Abate that one. The other is a outlying building of Governor Prince. We stopped bills on Governor Prince, that got missed. So this
Okay.
is actually a bill from 2022 that needs to
I think
come off our books.
I think we can do that. How about a motion?
Motion to abate the identified properties.
Okay, second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Hi, Tim Cunahan.
Hi, Jack Hadzick.
Hi, Bob Rich.
Hi, Jenny Farber.
Mark Person, aye.
Hi, Tim Brady.
Okay, thank you. And next?
Next in your packet, you have 3 letters from customers who received warnings and fines. We can take the first one, 16 Tanglewood Terrace. Mail went off Cape, they were on Cape. When they got to their off Cape home, they got the warning and the fine all at the same time when they opened up all their mail. They're looking to have the fine abated. As soon as they got the warning letter, they did call their contractor and had it shut down.
What is the Wheel of Commission? You have something you want to say, Kevin?
No, I'm just waiting for
You're anxious?
sewer department. I thought I didn't realize you had all these.
Oh,
so.
sorry. So we need to either say yes, no, or something else.
I'm not clear what's being requested.
They want their fine, it's not refunded because they didn't pay it probably, but abated,
Rescinded,
rescinded, erased,
raised,
Abated.
forgotten,
abated.
We've,
Revoked.
revoked,
well, we've committed it, so once it's committed, it has to be abated.
abated.
So what do you want to do?
I would move approval.
Anybody say?
Each one's a little different, but same message. They got both at the same time. Or actually, 2 of them got both at the same time. By the time they got the warning letter and shut it off, they were receiving the fine. And they just
Can I ask you, just my own curiosity, what was the date that the first letter went out?
I would have to ask
But
Laura. I can find that out and we could revisit it if you'd like.
Whatever. Anybody want to second Tim's motion?
Second.
Okay, anyone want to vote?
Hi, Tim Cunahan.
I, Jack Hadzick.
Hi, Bob Rich.
Jenny Farber,
Kevin Reynolds.
I'm my person.
Aye, Tim Brady.
700.
For all 3?
No?
Oh, okay, first
Winslow.
one?
Yeah, it was, I think that was Tanglewood.
Yep.
Did we do Winslow?
So the next one, he seems to have had he didn't understand the difference between powerhead and drip irrigation. So he conformed with the hours and thought
He got the hours completely.
yeah, he got
wrong.
them all mixed up too, so.
I mean, this guy's an investment banker, and he got the hours completely wrong and didn't understand sprinkler heads.
When he got the insert into the bill, he did not understand it.
He didn't read it, basically.
Yeah, I don't know, but
Is the sprinkler off? Do we
it is
know?
now.
It is now.
It is once he got everything.
I would make a motion to approve.
Anybody want a second?
Second.
Sounded reluctant.
Nay, Tim Cunahan.
Okay, Jack.
I, Jack Hadzick.
Hi, Bob Rich.
I'm going to vote nay.
Aye, Kevin Reynolds.
Oh, my God, my person, aye.
Aye, Tim Brady.
So what is that? Is that 520? Is that
Yeah.
right? 520. Okay, and Ace Hardware.
Similar to the first, we sent them a warning letter. They got it,
Of June 29th.
July 29th is when they wrote this, but that's when they got the fine. Prior to that, they got the letter with the warning. When they got the warning, they turned off the irrigation, and shortly thereafter, after it had already been turned off, they got the fine because
Right, and they got a warning letter last year as well. That was like July 4th weekend to get shut off. Anybody want to make a motion?
I will,
Okay,
to approve.
okay. Second? I have no second.
Second,
Okay, thank you.
I just can't vote, I can motion.
You can second.
I did.
Thank you.
I understand.
So, Tim?
Sounds like a repeat offender. Nay, Tim Cunahan.
Jack?
Nay, Jack Hadzick.
I abstain.
You can't abstain.
Yes, you can.
Yes, he can.
Okay, I say nay. I say nay.
I say nay.
Aye.
Okay. Mark?
Good grief.
Pardon me?
I, Tim Brady,
You said, so that's 3,
4 to 3.
There's 7 voters.
yes.
4 to 3.
So that's 3-4-0.
Before.
Yeah.
Don't go in there, though.
I never do. All right, next. DPW wastewater update.
Don't I do the commitments?
Yes, we do have commitments.
The regular commitments?
Yep. We have
Oh,
commitments.
sorry.
For sewer, July 2026 totaling $52,714.50.
Right, they're right here. Could I get a motion?
Yes. I move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
I, Tim Cunahan.
I, Jack Hadzick.
I, Bob Rich.
Hi, Jenny Farber.
Aye, Kevin Mahoney.
I'm Mark Forsyth.
I, Tim Brady.
700, next.
Commitments for water totaling, water and sewer actually, totaling $863,064.65.
Wow.
Yeah,
Number.
yep. Can I get a motion?
Water and sewer rates, billing, quarterly billing.
Okay. Motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
I, Tim Cunahan.
I, Jack Hadzick.
I, Bob Rich.
Hi, Jenny
Mark
Farber.
Person.
Kevin.
Kevin, did
Aye,
you
Kevin
vote?
Mahoney.
Okay. Tim?
I, Tim Brady.
Okay, 700. I know it's been a long afternoon. Are we finished now?
We are finished.
Okay. So, Rich?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
My update's going to be brief today, not much going on, which is good. So first thing, I want to thank the board for giving the authority to the chair to work with us to prepare the letter for the stub locations, given the timing. So that letter went out to all Phase 3 property owners last week. It is out. If you're paying attention to this meeting, please expect a letter to be coming. That letter is basically to confirm the stub location. As we're about to proceed with Phase 3 construction, we want to make sure we understand where you want your stub on your property. We did a design. We have a design location. We want to confirm that location. So prepare that, or be aware of that letter and respond if you want to change it. Second thing is we had our second construction meeting for Phase 3. We're starting to get a project schedule. That project is looking to commence at least mobilization starting the week of September 7th. So right after Labor Day, they're going to start mobilizing for Phase 3 construction. And then on the 14th, we're going to start breaking ground. Looks like they're proposing to start on Finley Road, right where pump station number 5 is, and work their way out onto Route 28. Again, that's going to be a disruptive process for the town. Again, another one particularly on 28, but we're in it again. We're going to start that pretty soon. So a couple more weeks, and we're going to be under construction again. We're going to provide them with 2 laydown areas similar to what we did last time. We're going to give them the opportunity to work through the Bay Ridge property for their construction laydown, and we'll also have them limited opportunity to the upper parking lot of Town Hall. So that has been communicated to them. No guarantee that it will be for the whole 3 years, as other priorities might come up with the town, but we want to let them know at this time that they can use that area. So that's it for my update. Phase 3, we're almost done with Phase 2, but it's going to be a lot of Phase 3 discussion.
So with the signage, when will the signage go up to give the people a warning about the impact on the driving and so on? Especially, I'm thinking I cut a pond to Finley to the transfer station, so I have to get my mind wrapped around
So I
not
think we
going
want
that
to,
way.
we want to get one more construction meeting in, which is for next week, and at that time, we'll discuss when and how we're going to actually broadcast the information. I know some of the other signages that we have put up in the town, particularly identifying the project as an SRF project, things like that. We might seek other avenues that are compliant with the SRF program to be able to put that signage either on the town website or some other bulletin. They've changed the requirement a little bit
Okay.
about that, but.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
But we will certainly, once we get it nailed down next week from the contractor, where they're going to start, what their plan is, then we will start getting that information out.
Thank you.
Ginny?
Yes.
So I got my letter. I'm in phase 3. I'm looking forward to it. But the stub location that I got goes into my driveway. I don't want to rip up the asphalt in my driveway. And how much time do I have to respond to the letter to say that I want to move it? Because I'm thinking I might want to get an engineer involved to determine where the stub should be.
Believe the letter stated by September 15th, so you have until September 15th to decide.
It's really fast, right? I mean, I probably can't get an engineer to advise me in that time period.
I think, you know, if that's a concern of yours, then maybe articulate the concern in a response, and we might be able to let the contractor know that this one's still working through their location with an engineer. We didn't have a definitive response. And then we at least can maybe keep that open. I'll talk to them about that, you know, particularly property by property. We have a little bit of time if they're working on Finley on Route 28, but once they start moving, you know, particularly if you have a stub on 28, we're going to need to know that answer quick.
Well, so I had heard from Ginny, actually, that you weren't going to be doing Herringbrook until the fall of...
I said there was a request not to do Herringbrook until the
Yeah.
fall.
Okay.
There's a request, and we think they're going to
don't wanna put
be able
words
to
in your
No,
mouth.
don't, please.
honor that request.
Careful.
But, yeah, but it would seem to me, well, I'm just wondering about the flexibility in that date. And I can work with whatever you tell me, but,
Well, I think any response by September 15th is better than no response. So I would say articulate your concern in the response, and I think we have some flexibility there.
okay, thank you.
Okay. So next is wastewater management advisory committee. Kevin has been very patient.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have a lot on our work plan, even though we're just an advisory board. Phase 2 sewer connections are over 14%, 53 parcels connected out of the 374 that will be connected in the sewer area. We have voted, and a recommendation is going to the Fire Rescue Building Committee, as well as the Select Board, who we're advisory to, relative to a question that was asked through public comment to the Fire Rescue Committee, urging a sewer connection be incorporated into that project. We've discussed it at wastewater management in our recommendation, and if you, Madam Chair, want to share a copy of this with your members, it might be helpful. We're laying out what phase that area would be considered, which is much later, phase 14. Also, we're indicating that there's already a PRB downstream that is actually doing some effective prevention of air nitrogen. Plus further, we're recommending as a leadership example to work with a consultant for very, very short dollars that would work with the architect, the engineers, to assess the applicability of either a urine diversion or composting toilet system in that new facility. It could be a way of leading by example, so that'll be in our recommendation. The other thing we went through is we're near final on the Mill Pond study report that, as you know, we had looked at 10 alternatives for short-term ways to mitigate Mill Pond nitrogen and other water impairments. We did settle on 3, but the final report will be produced and issued very shortly. We do have some comments from one member of the neighborhood that still wants to participate, and we're certainly open to that. As Rich mentioned earlier, when Dan Pelletier was going over the recommendation on betterment for a GIS database, we actually saw at our meeting, which was pretty exciting, the first rollout of our water sewer database. Pretty exciting. So when we get this rolled out, we kind of asked AECom and the consultants working on this to determine if we're going to get a Christmas present. And they did say this should be ready by the end of this year, which means anyone and everyone can go in, click their property, understand where they are in phases of sewer, and all kinds of particulars that'll be enhanced as the time comes. But the nice thing about this is really a tool that builds on so much existing data in town, assessor data. So this is not creating new stuff. It's just relying on everything that's people are doing and giving a visual tool. The other thing from Rich's standpoint, and he noted this, just as the water department has tablets where they can go about town and see where the water lines are, the gate valves and stuff, this is also going to be a tool for DPW and Veolia to use with their permission level to actually see all the sewer facilities. So we've really come a long way, and it's, I can't say enough in terms of how exciting this is, and thank everybody for the investment we've made in this. The other thing we looked at was a draft scope of study for what's referred to as the Pochette Marsh Attenuation Study. We can invest a lot of money into pipes, but there are some natural processes that actually uptake nitrogen called healthy marsh systems. So we're actually exploring a scope of hiring a consultant or a consultant team that would take what we know is already working in Pochette and see if we might squeeze a few more nitrogen credits out of that. The whole goal is, if this is working, how do we keep it healthy for the long term, and how do we save money on future phases or even eliminate future phases? One thing that we have as a future agenda item for a special meeting we're holding on the 27th is, we understand, and you may be aware, there's a petition circulating to advance determination of a TMDL for Nauset Estuary. That is way out in our planning horizon. I think some of you know, those that are concerned about long-term capital planning, advancing that would put some constraints. But petitioners are active, they're getting signatures, they're going before the select board on, I believe, September 9th, and we're meeting at Wastewater Management to offer kind of our perspective for the select board to consider as they're evaluating what they do with that petition. And there's a few other things, nothing major to share, but I did want to get that out in terms of what the petition is, because that could cause some impact. And again, the other thing that could happen is they could present to the select board, through the dialogue, might be learning how we'll eventually get there. But at the same time, it's their right to push a petition. Whether they choose to do it at a special town meeting this fall, hold it to May or some future time, we don't know. But it's my update.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions for Kevin? Thank you, Kevin.
Hey.
So our next order of business is the Veolia update. And Jesse, thank you and your team for your patience. It's been a long meeting.
Man, it's par for the course. Jesse Freeman, Veolia. So this monthly report, things are going pretty good up on the hill or at the plant. Operations and permit are in good standing. We're passing permit well. Flows are up. We treated approximately about 5 million gallons on whole. So every month we've seen an increase, which is good for the facility, and you have room for growth. So those are both positive. We've been changing some of the process around a little bit, trying to make things more efficient. It's been going well. Up on the tanks, we farm bugs to treat the water. So we're trying to get those bugs as happy as possible, and they're looking pretty happy right now. We do have a sequencing batch reactor number 1 is broken. We are due to repair it hopefully by the end of September, but that comes with some pending, can we get the parts, how does it, how all the little dots will align, how we're going to get everything together. Currently looks good. We'll also be bringing out the manufacturer to take a look at it, some added technicians, electricians, etc. But it looks good. We're going to shoot for the repairs by the end of September. Then I have a follow-up item from last time I was up here with the wicks. So we got with engineering on the wicks. Remember, we were looking at the observation tubes. We had some questions whether they are performing well. After our engineering review and a nice group discussion and looking at some data across a year's data set, they look really good. The observation tubes have some flaws, but the new parameters moving forward is we're going to look at how much we're pumping at them and how much the water rises in the well, like how much is actually filtering out. And currently you're in a great state. The highest they've gone is 6. They can go a whole lot higher, and they're not showing any sign of clogging. They're not showing any sign of distress. Also, in the future, if we did have one that was distressed, we can rest them. So the AECOM stated, and the professionals that told us how specifically they want it used, and that's a great thing because we wouldn't have to use money or chemical addition or burn them out. We can just relax them, and because we have a redundancy with 5 wicks, we should have that adequate rest period and be able to cycle through all 5. I was really happy to learn this. Wicks aren't my specialty, so I had a little fun with the learning curve of getting caught up with the speed with them. We still will record the observation tubes data, but it's not what we're going to lean on for operational condition. So that was really a pleasant experience. I don't have a whole lot other to add other than, I guess questions. We'll take some questions if anybody has any questions about the treatment this month, or go ahead, Mark.
My question is kind of more, maybe it's more a question for Rich. Are we going to have a conversation about revenue and projections? And, you know, I noticed that the revenue this year is, for the first month, down a little bit from last year. And maybe it's kind of a lead-in to early thinking ahead of the budgeting season. But I was just curious as to, for the month of July, sewer use revenue is down, septage revenue is down. So what thoughts on any of that?
I don't think any of the revenues are down that sparks any alarm. We can certainly
Well, I'm not looking at alarm.
have a conversation once we start getting into the budget process. Some of the assumptions that we've had. I mean, I put some estimated projections of what the revenue is going to be. I do it for all the budgets across 8 divisions, 9 divisions. Sometimes we're on the mark or under mark. So happy to have more of that discussion. If that's something we want to go in that direction, we can do that. But I would probably just ask, can we do it during the budget process? Hopefully we can start that budget process earlier this year. I know I brought the budget to you guys late last year, and I think I'd like to get you guys more involved into the development of the budget. So that works for you.
I'm just trying to think sort of like the sewer use revenue would be down as to, you know, is that the weather? Is that the, you know?
I think that this is why we have that budget surplus, because of the fact that sewer revenue can fluctuate so much in a given year, whether it be a drought year, we don't have a lot of water usage, whether it's a weather year, a bad weather year, whether we have some issues that arise.
There could be a drought because it's the irrigation.
That doesn't
That's
go
what
into
it's
the-
the, you know, it's an.
People weren't drinking out of the hoses.
No, it's.
Exactly. It's across the board, even for water. I mean, that's why we build in these surpluses, because so many things impact.
I'm just, you know, these are just the meters clicking through, and so it's just really what's causing the meters, and that's what it is, it's the
I'm glad he
irrigation
was
thing.
at the beach, it was so hot. Mark?
Is there any way to measure the microplastics in the sewage?
I personally haven't measured microplastics, but somebody has to have the technology to do it,
Do
the
you have
lab.
the technology to do it?
At our facility, no. But we would send it out to a specified lab and let them do it. So it is possible, but it would be outsourced.
It would be outsourced. Do you have any idea how much it would cost?
No, the cost for what they test can vary greatly. It depends on the technology applied and the resources consumed to do such. So if it requires special, like precious metals, which occasionally, specialized reagents, a timely turnaround, or if it's a lengthy process, I mean, it can vary a lot, Mark. I mean, I wish I could give you a clearer, I can look into it and get you an answer, but off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Jesse, can you tell us what size micron these filters are?
We're currently at 5.
5 microns?
Yeah, we could possibly go to 2. That should alleviate most large particle sizes. It won't alleviate pin flock. And most likely it'll catch a lot of particulate, but won't catch everything.
My concern is that, my reading in connection with what microplastics are doing to human beings is just increasing and increasing and increasing. And so I'm just wondering if there was a way to somehow moderate.
It's a valid concern. I worry about it too. We stick to legislation and the law as far as what's required. To go above the law, I mean, or not above, beyond, to do a little extra. I mean, we can submit a request, we can work through Rich, we can find it in the budget if you're concerned or the town's concerned, and we can certainly look into it and get a quote going.
There are, not to go on and on, but there are many communities that are now doing away with all plastic utensils that handle food and reverting to metal.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a concern. You're right to ask the question. I don't have any legal requirements to monitor it or reduce it. Maybe that's kind of sad, but that's one of those things we got to maybe bump up the law chain, get some legislation someday going on a limit, but that will fall on the state and feds. Currently, I don't have a limit.
But I remember that there was a bug that eats plastics in this system.
There's all kinds of unique studies and things out there, and science is amazing. We can certainly look into what's out there in the world. We're not using any kind of technology to target such, and that's definitely not my specialty, as much as I love laboratory work, and I love the biology, but right now we're not targeting plastics.
Interesting
Thank
to
you.
bring it up. Thank you for bringing it up. Any other questions? Okay, Sue, would you be okay if I asked Mike Salitro and we backed up? Thank you for coming in, Mike. 66 and 76 Route 6A update, preservation of affordable housing, LLC, POA, Housing Assistance Corporation, HAC, Habitat for Humanity, Inc., seeking waivers from local requirements, including fees. What's new?
Thank you, Madam Chair. They had the continued portion of their hearing last night. That has been again continued to September 23. During the hearing last night, the petitioner developers agreed to bring the request, the waiver request of anything to do with sewer to this board, so it'll likely appear on the next agenda for this board.
Okay, all right.
The figures have yet to be calculated. I know we've discussed it here at prior meetings, but they will be determined before that gets finalized. They've agreed to have the forum be here, as we kind of talked about much earlier on in this process.
Okay, okay. Anything else we need to know about? I was there till about 8:30, and I understand there were some water questions after I left, but somebody will answer them.
The water questions?
There were water questions. I haven't listened to the tape yet this morning or today, so I don't know what they were. But, okay. Is it a ZBA meeting tonight too, or is
There's a ZBA meeting tomorrow night,
tomorrow night? Okay,
but not on this project.
right.
Do you have an estimate of what this waiver will amount to in dollars?
No.
There will be a okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Thank you very much, Mike. So Sue, where are we?
We are-
Operating report.
Yes, so you have before you your operating report for today's meeting. Highlights, Ron Collins, Steve Wicklin, and I toured the elementary school. We're creating a sampling plan for eventual sampling of lead plumbing fixtures in the school. We'll be doing that probably sometime September. I think Steve and I are gonna I'll be doing the sampling, Steve will help me. Storage tank mixers bid opening was held last Wednesday, the 12th. Tie Sales was the low bidder at $82,000. We're gonna do that project in the fall, so we'll have to drain one tank at a time. Hopefully, we'll have it inspected while they're empty as well, so it'll be quick. Drain tank 2 first, install the new PAX mixer, get it tested so that we can put it back on, then we'll start in on tank 1.
Okay.
Lead and copper program, I am down to 1. I need 1. Every year I have this issue. We pay them to do it, and so if I don't get that 1, we will be in violation with the lead and copper rule, and will receive a notice of noncompliance from DEP. So I will send out a 3rd request for letters. I will inquire with DEP whether I can use an alternate. The problem with the alternate is DEP wants you to specify who it is and change your sampling plan accordingly. They don't make it easy, as opposed to sending out letters and seeing who responds. So I will work with DEP on that, though.
So what are high-risk homes? Are there certain homes in town that are considered high-risk?
We had to create a sampling plan with DEP. We need 30 samples. I went and found 40 to put on well, originally we had to have 60. So I submitted 40 for the reduced plan with 30, and DEP was annoyed with me at that, but I needed backup for obvious reasons. And then you create an alternate list as well.
What makes it a high-risk home? Its age?
So in our case, because we have no lead service lines, it would be the years like 82 to 85, prior to lead solder being.
So there have to be specific houses.
Specific houses. And once you create the sampling plan, I can't deviate and go pick another house. It has to be somebody on the sampling plan that agreed to do it originally. And after several years of doing it, they
get tired
of doing it.
Wow.
So Friday, we had a water break, per se. We were installing a gate and it blew off. That evening, we ended up with many dirty water calls, and we had a couple of guys go out, and they went around flushing to try and fix that issue. Just wanted to make you aware, because it was a large area of businesses, restaurants that were affected.
Yeah, here.
It was on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm sure. I did include the drought conditions in my report as opposed to separately this time. We did remain at a level 2. They will be meeting again in early September. We'll see where we're at then. We are a little bit higher than last year on the well. I did include the graph, but we are still a whole foot higher than we need to be for our trigger. And then if you had any questions about anything else in the report.
How do we make it rain? I mean,
No,
I don't understand.
it's supposed to be raining now.
But you can see too, our revenues were down 4%.
Could we go like seed the clouds like they used to do with those little
Goodness.
airplanes?
Maybe you could go out in the backyard
Could
and
see
do
the
a rain
clouds
dance.
and everybody can say.
Rain dance. Yeah, you could do that. And then, have to be a lot of them. Annual commissioners matters, Kevin.
So, given the time, I don't know if we could spend the time we wanted to. I don't want to get grounded out in the parking lot, so.
Okay.
I apologize. I sent the list out to everybody. It should have been the red line version, which incorporated Mike Salitro's comments. So when I do look at it, or look at it again, look at that version. And I don't know, Ginny, I mean, the idea was to have people look at that list and question why some things were on there, and then perhaps propose adding some, but given where we are, maybe we just defer that to the next meeting if no one,
Well, how would you feel about
Probably
taking emails from people?
Where there's
Yeah.
no use in certainly no.
Yeah, take some input from people over the next month, and then we'll do a discussion
sure,
at a less congested meeting.
fine.
Okay. That being the case,
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
by roll call?
Hi, Tim Coonahan.
I, Jack Kadzik.
Hi, Bob Rich.
Hi, Jenny Farber.
Hi, Kevin Mahoney.
I'm Mark Burson.
Hi, Tim Brady.
700, we're out.